Well, hello and welcome. I'm Sharon Gamble, founder and director of Sweet Selah Ministries. And every Tuesday night, we have a Tuesday talk. Whether you're listening Tuesday night or a week from Thursday, welcome. Let me know you're there, please. Comments help us be seen. So say hi. Tell me where you're from. Are you from Chattanooga? Are you from Alaska? I'd love to know. So just write me something. We are going to spend the month of April unpacking what happened after Jesus rose from the dead. We've just celebrated Easter. I hope you had a wonderful, worshipful Easter day. And the next 3 weeks, we're going to talk about what Jesus did after he rose from the dead. Because the story didn't just end there. But we're going to start today at the tomb. We're going to look at all four gospel stories and understand why one needs to look at the Bible as a whole to get the full picture. When there's been a major event, a car accident perhaps, or an earthquake, and reporters come and interview the people about what happened, they get different stories because they're hearing from people with different perspectives. Some people see one thing, some people see something else. Things are missed. And the best way to get the best picture of what happened is to hear all the stories. We've learned that the hard way, haven't we? Have you ever had a child come to you and tell you how they've been wronged? And you're all on their side until the sibling comes and explains the other part of the story that the child that was wronged forgot to tell, like how they punched him first or something. We need to hear the whole story to understand. And the resurrection is the key to Christianity. If Jesus did not rise from the dead, what are we doing following him? Right? It's pretty important. So let's look at all four gospel stories. Let me find my first start here, which is in Matthew. And let's read through them and talk about them because there's things that are different about each one, and there are things that they hold in common. So, Matthew 28, starting with verse 1. Early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb. So, we're hearing it from two perspectives here. Suddenly, there was a great earthquake. Oh my goodness, they're there at the beginning of this thing. For an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled aside the stone, and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. The guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. That's where I would be. Like, what? This does not happen. Stones don't roll away. Angels, beings from another dimension. Yeah, I'd faint too. Then the angel spoke to the women who had not fainted. Don't be afraid, he said. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. So Jesus walked out of that tomb before the stone was rolled away. Isn't that fun? Come, see where his body was lying. And now go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead and he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Remember what I have told you. The women ran quickly from the tomb. They were very frightened, but also filled with great joy, and they rushed to give the disciples the angel's message. And as they went, Jesus met them and greeted them. And they ran to him, grasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, Don't be afraid. Go tell my brothers to leave for Galilee, and they will see me there. Okay, so in this story, we hear from Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. We're not sure which Mary that was. And they see it this way. And they have a message and they give it. They were terrified and also joy filled. And they saw the empty tomb. Mark 16, starting at verse 1. Saturday evening, when the Sabbath ended, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Salome, went out and purchased burial spices so they could anoint Jesus' body. So as soon as Sabbath's over, they're getting ready. Very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, Who will roll away the stone for us when the entrance to the tomb. But as they arrived, they looked up and saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. So in this account, the person that's telling Mark, the stone had been rolled aside. And of course they were worried. How are they going to get in? They're going to have to beg the guards to push the stone out of the way. Well, the guards have fainted dead, and the stone is rolled back. They got a clear view. So they entered the tomb. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a white robe sitting on the right side. The women were shocked, but the angel said, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He isn't here." Well, there's consistency. He's not here. He's not here. He is risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid his body. Now go and tell his disciples, including Peter. Isn't that fun that it says including Peter? Peter, the one that denied him. Including Peter, tell him too, that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. Same advice, to go to Galilee. You will see him there just as he told you before he died. The women fled from the tomb, trembling and bewildered, and they said nothing to anyone because they were too frightened. So this couldn't have been Mary Magdalene. Perhaps Mark got the story from Salome, and she was the frightened one who ran away. I don't know. Luke 24, starting at verse 1. But very early on Sunday morning, the women went to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. They found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance, so they went in, but they didn't find the body of the Lord Jesus. As they stood there puzzled, two men suddenly appeared to them, clothed in dazzling robes. The women were terrified and bowed with their faces to the ground. Then the men asked, "Why are you looking among the dead for someone who is alive? He isn't here." Third time we hear that. Whatever else, Jesus wasn't there. His body was not in the tomb. He is risen from the dead. Third time, Jesus is risen. Remember what he told you back in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be betrayed into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and that he would rise again on the third day? He'd already told them this, and no one understood it, that it was literal, but it was. Then they remembered what he had said, that he had said this. So they rushed back from the tomb to tell his 11 disciples and everyone else what had happened. Why 11? Because Judas had killed himself by this point. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and several other women who told the apostles what had happened. So the group has grown. Different women perhaps came at different times with the same purpose, and different writers of these gospels, eyewitnesses, found different eyewitnesses to talk about it. But the story sounded like nonsense to the men when they were told. However, Peter jumped up and ran to the tomb to look. Stooping, he peered in and saw the empty linen wrappings. Then he went home again, wondering what had happened. So now we're moving beyond the women to one of the disciples, Peter, responding. We're going to finish with John. John was there, and we're going to hear his version of the story. John 20, verse 1. Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter. Remember how the angel said, and Peter, tell Peter. And the other disciple, the one who Jesus loved, which is John. She said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb and we don't know where they put him." So at this point, she's confused. He's not here doesn't mean he's risen to her yet. She's going to have an encounter with Jesus very shortly. Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb. They were both running, but the other disciple outran Peter. John has to boast on that one, I guess, and reached the tomb first. He stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up. Jesus was tidy when he came out of the grave clothes and lying apart from the other wrappings. Then the disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then they hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. Then they went home. I mean, what else are they going to do? They don't know where Jesus is at the moment. They just know he's not there, and he's been declared risen from the dead. So they went home. Bewildered. What just happened? Oh my goodness. So 4 accounts different perspectives from different people who were there at different times. What do they all have in common? The stone was rolled away. Jesus' body was not there. It was terrifying to see angel or angels. And eventually they believed he's risen from the dead. I love the story in John about the face part folded up. If Jesus, who could walk through walls at this point, remember later he speaks to the disciples and he walks right through the wall. If Jesus in his new body can kind of walk through things, I think he just came up out of those grave clothes and they just lay flat there and took the cloth off his face and folded it up. He didn't need the stone to be rolled away for him. He walked right out of that tomb. The Bible says that eventually 500 people saw the risen Lord. And our whole faith is built on the truth that that happened. Men and women went to their deaths because they would not deny what they had seen. Jesus rose again. I love these accounts. I actually love the weird inconsistencies in them, as well as the things that are the same, because no one's trying to make the Bible like perfectly in sync, like you kind of would if you wanted to promote a conspiracy. They're just letting people tell the story the way they saw it. So it's even more believable to me because of that. But of course, the thing that's most believable is that why would you die? Excruciating deaths. Peter was crucified unless you really saw it. They really saw it. And I believe it. And because Jesus rose from the dead, because he took our punishment on himself and conquered death, someday I am going to be with him. I will pass out of this body that is getting older and wrinklier by the moment, and I'll be given a new one in heaven. And I have a sure hope that someday that's where I'm going to be. I hope you do too. If not, would you write me? Let's talk about it. My email is sharon@sweetselah.org. Thank you so much for listening to Tuesday Talk. Let me know you're there. God bless you and happy week after Easter.